I'm Benjamin Hall, and I'm searching for heroes. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. And well, you are joining me on a very, very special day, a very special episode of this podcast. And that is because, and I'm amazed to say it, we have now reached 1 year that we have been doing this podcast. And first of all, I hope that you've really enjoyed it. But secondly, and one of the reasons that I'm doing this episode this week is because I don't think I understood or realized when I started how much I would learn, or how many different voices I would hear, or how many different ideas of resilience and strength are out there. And so what we wanted to do today was go over just a few of our guests, some moments that stood out for me, each of which I think describes a different sense of resilience and strength to you. And I hope more than anything that you've enjoyed the podcast so far. And I think that you really will enjoy today's episode as well. So the first guest that I wanted to go back to and listen to just a few minutes from her episode is Amanda Boxtel. Now, Amanda was the founder of Bridging Bionics, and she suffered a freak skiing accident back in 1992. It left her paralyzed. And she speaks so beautifully, which is also amazing. And it's learning about how someone gets through something that is so difficult. And have a listen to her words, and then I'll talk a little bit about it afterwards. Here she is.
So I was 24 years old, and I still had that feeling of being invincible and that I could do anything. I went up on the chairlift in Snowmass Village on a Snowmass mountain, and I had this weird premonition and this sensation that came over me that I had no business being on the mountain that day. I can't explain it to this day. I got off the chairlift and I was shaking. I was trembling. And two people tapped me on my shoulder and asked me if I was okay. And I looked at them and I said, yes, I'm fine, but I just need to get off the mountain. And in order to remain visible, I skied purposefully underneath the chairlift, and I stopped in the flats again, and I looked out at the view as though I was looking for the last time. I felt that I remember it clearly. And then I took off again, and I crossed my tips. I did a somersault. I landed on my back. An electric current shattered through my whole body, and it was as if someone turned off the light switch and there was nothing. I shattered 4 vertebrae in a split second, T10, 11, 12, and L1, and there was nothing. There was no movement or sensation below my pelvis. I was paralyzed. I was winded. All I could do was call. I called for help as if to signify the emergency of the situation. A man in a neon orange ski suit said that they had called for ski patrol. Ski patrol came and they uncrumpled my body, held my head and looked into my eyes. And they asked me what my name was, where I lived, how many fingers do you have up? I said 3. How many now? 4. And I can remember saying, I can't move my legs. I can't feel. I can't move my legs.
No pain. No pain.
Nothing. And they took me down on a toboggan, and I was flown on a flight for life to St. Anthony's Hospital in Denver. And it was a couple of weeks later that a young doctor, his face seemed younger than mine, he strode into my hospital room and he delivered the news. And he said, Amanda, you'll never walk again. And as if he said, to shed light on the situation, he said, but you can still have children. It's like, who cares? Who cares? Those words resounded in every cell of my body. And I became determined to prove him wrong, to prove the doctor, myself, God, wrong, that I was going to walk out of those hospital doors. And in 32 years later, I'm sitting in front of you. But I can honestly say that I really love my life. And I feel like, having gone through it, that I'm a more beautiful woman. I think there's beauty in our brokenness. Mm. And through navigating trauma and adversity and peeling off those layers like an onion, I've exposed the raw beauty of myself. And it's been a journey of growth.
Well, listening to that, again, it brings me back to, well, first of all, a lot of the experiences that I have, which I share with her. But, a number of things come out of that. First of all, and many of my guests say this, pain makes you stronger. Pain can really help you discover yourselves. Sometimes, you can find joy in the hardest moments. And I think Amanda phrased that so well. And as with many other guests, she was very clear that, look, it can take time to get over things. It can. It takes time for everyone to get over things, but it will happen eventually. And after that, you can grow. And traumatic events, they don't leave you forever, but you can learn to adapt. You can learn to move forward. And I think that that's something that I've learned firsthand. And, I think that Amanda phrased so well. Our next guest was a really tough one for me to do. It was difficult. And that's because our next guest that I want to listen to is Maya Rajev. She was one of the women who was taken hostage by Hamas on October the 7th. She was 22 years old. She was taken down into their tunnels and she was badly injured. But she too has fought through. And also we share some amazing elements of her story and my experience as well, which I'll talk to you about after we've listened to her.
While he driving, we saw, I look at the window and I saw a lot of dead bodies and cars crushed in trees and big minivan that had a lot of seat of people and no one is inside and everyone is dead. And I remember looking at Itai and I'm telling him, I'm calling Dad. I just had a feeling that I need to call him. So I'm calling him.
I think the first thing you do is you want to be in touch with your family.
Yeah. Also the whole time while I was running and heard the gunshot, he called me a bunch of times and I didn't pick up because I didn't want him to hear the gunshots because I knew that he will come and it's too dangerous. So I called him. At the moment he picked up the phone, almost saw a big truck in front of us and they were 9 terrorists getting off of it and start shooting at us, spraying the car tons of bullets really. And Itai got shot first at the crunch here. Then I got shot in that leg and then in that leg also. Here.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. So did they come and they moved towards you and surrounded the car?
Yeah, they shoot from everywhere. And my father heard everything. I screamed that I got shot and they are going to kill us, and I tell him that I love him and that we can't get out because we're inside of the car and they are outside. And
did you think at that point, did you think that they were going to kill you?
Yeah, I was sure that they are going to kill us. They started to come closer to us, really, really near the car and pointed the guns through the window and just looking at us. And my brother screams please, please. We have that, we have the voice, the phone call, it's recorded, yeah. So Itai says please, and they just tell us to get out of the car. and then they just took us.
But could you get out of the car? I mean, you couldn't.
The bullet hit the bone and it crushed the bone, and my foot was just falling. It wasn't connected to anything. It's like it was like this, so it just fell because all of that part was missing. There was nothing to hold it. So, and also that leg was very bleeding, and all the flesh was out, and it was
Did
horrible.
you feel the pain at that point, or was the adrenaline maybe?
You feel the pain, but I think I was more scared than in pain. So I didn't let it control me. Like the moment I got shot and I saw everything, I told myself, okay, you need to focus. You can't just start crying and screaming. There are terrorists here of Hamas. You need to be aware to what happens. You can't just be naive to the situation.
You're in staying alive mode.
Yeah.
To focus on what you can do.
Yes. And everything they tell you, you do. Like everything they told me, I just said, okay, whatever you want, I will do.
Which language were they speaking to?
At the first day, they spoke Hebrew, a lot of Hebrew, a little Arabic, and maybe some English too. But most of it was in Hebrew. So they pulled us out of the car, and I told them that I can't walk. They told me to get up, to stand, and raise my hand, and I couldn't. So I lay on the road and just raising my hand like this. They came to me. They were trying to untie my shoe, and they couldn't. They were really aggressive, so I asked them if I can do it myself. I stopped him and I told him, let me do it myself, and I did. And then I saw that my leg is, I thought at this moment that I'm going home without a leg. Like I always knew that I will go home. I didn't know how long it's going to take, but I always knew that I will see my family again.
I wonder why. I wonder what that was.
I have no idea. Also, when they shoot us, I remember myself looking at the floor of the car and telling myself, it's not the end of you, you are not going to die, it's okay. Like, I have so much things that I need to do in my life. There's no way I'm going to die here.
You know, I felt the same thing. I felt I was going home. I knew I was going home. And I don't know why, but I knew it.
Yeah, it's something like that. Something happens to you, so I didn't know that I have this inside me, so it's just coming outside, and it's like survive mode.
Well, first of all, listening to that, I just think so many people, and I think in hers maybe worse than almost anyone's, but many of the experiences of my guests were people who were not expecting what happened to them to happen. In some cases, in my eyes as well, it went from the best moment in her life. She had wanted for a long time to go to that music festival to suddenly the worst. And what is a human spirit? How do you react in that sort of moment? And when she talks about how she did, the power she found, that she consciously told herself, don't let the fear control you. Don't scream, don't cry, don't lose that moment of focus. I found that fascinating. That is such resilience right there. Knowing that you have to control the worst fear that you're having if you're going to get through this. And she managed to do that. And so fascinated to know where that strength comes from, how she managed to find that. And another thing that amazed me, another thing that I also felt after the attack in Ukraine was that she knew, and you heard her say it right there, she knew she wasn't going to die. She knew she was going to see her family again. And I don't know what drives that. And I know one thing is that the strength that gives you, it's a fighting spirit as well. It means that you're going to keep looking forward. You're going to keep finding a way through difficult things. And I was just so amazed speaking to her. And I did that interview in person in Israel, that she managed to find that strength and get to the worst of the worst. And because an aside, that always reminds me of the hate that can be out there too. You know, we talk on this podcast about all the amazing things and the strength and the positivity, but you know, sometimes you've got to look at what Hamas did and it's almost impossible to understand where they get that hatred. And it's a reminder that there is good in this world, but there is evil as well. And each and every one of us has to fight as hard as we can to push the evil away, to fight it away. And Maya speaking out now, as she continues to do, is part of that. So that was a tough interview, but also one of the most, I think, something that we learned so much from. And I think she really is someone that we can look up to.
We'll be back in a moment with Searching for Heroes.
The next guest that I'd like to take us back to is Sarah Verrado. Now, Sarah is now a great friend of mine, and that's because Sarah was the person who put together the team that came to rescue me and find me in Ukraine. But more than that, and, you know, all the times we've spoken since and the friendship we found and developed since after that has just reminded me that people like Sarah are people who need to run this world and run the country. She is amazing, and she spends every second of every day thinking about others and trying to help others. So listen to a bit of Sarah's interview, and we'll come back to it afterwards.
Could you tell us a little bit about sort of the Operation Resiliency and the work you do there and some of the experiences you've had?
So much of the work that I've been blessed to do really does stem with my experience and Michael's deployment. He only had one combat deployment, which was devastating to him, that it was cut short. 9 months into the deployment, of course, he had to be medically evacuated. And what we saw, their unit was very hard hit. This was Bravo Company, 2nd of the 508th Parachute Infantry Regiment. They had about a 60% Purple Heart rate, and they sent 24 men home as casualties of an infantry group of 140 men. And so what we saw initially was this sheer will to survive these catastrophic physical injuries. And then slowly we saw that the unit started being hit by these mental health emergencies and suicide. And, in America, every 65 minutes, a veteran dies by his or her own hand. And how and what can we do to get that number as close to zero as possible? And I'll never stop. I mean, people have said to me, it's never going to be zero, but I'll never stop until we all are part of that effort. And so Operation Resiliency reunites the combat unit in the formation they originally deployed, recalling that honor and service that is innate to that military brotherhood and putting them back in that formation for their most important mission that they'll have the rest of their lives, which is to keep each other alive and thriving at home the same way they tried to on the battlefield.
Yeah, it's amazing how much community means, and I was in San Antonio at the Brooke Army Medical Center recovering, and that's the thing that I probably learned more than anything else, is that being in that community, the support you get from them. And I imagine the soldiers who have been side by side in the battlefield, I guess one of the hardest times is when you go home, many injured, they've lost friends, is that moment where you are taken out of that, where you lose that community. And is that where you see some of the biggest difficulties?
Yes, those transition periods. And in your own story, I certainly don't want to tell it for you, but I look at the camaraderie and the connectivity you had with Jock and how difficult that would have been to split immediately, because that was what remained. And I think when people are ripped from what they know and they're medevaced out, in your case, rushed out in this should be a movie scene, you want to be with what is familiar, right? And so that bond, it is more important than ever.
Yeah, and I remember also from almost the first few days that I finally was in Landstuhl and I was being treated by the military medics, the first thing they did was bring in people who had also been injured like me. So I understood it. So I knew what it was going to be like. And I know that's the kind of work that you do as well. You really try to bring people together as well. You mentioned Save Our Allies there briefly, my own evacuation. And it's another thing that you're doing, that it's about going out and saving people who are in trouble all around the world. And you have the most incredible group of people who help you and who set it up. Chad, Robichaud, Nick, Tim. I'm trying to understand what makes people like that operating in this world and helping veterans and going out to save lives, what it is for those people to put everything aside and just they have it in them that they want to go and make the world better and they want to save lives. Because to be honest, that isn't common. Most people do not feel like that. So what is it that makes the people who, like yourself and who you're surrounded with, what makes those people like that?
Well, those guys, they do the hard work. They are real life superheroes, and they truly are. They're incredible. But I tell this to people because it's true. When I've asked them to go, and all over the world to go, it never occurs to me that they would say no, because they wouldn't. And that is who they are. And that's why they're warriors. You know, you sit with the warriors and the conversation is different. The caliber is higher. The people and the missions and the way they spend their days, it's just better.
I wonder if you could talk to me about, you know, the process that a child goes through and the impact that losing a parent, perhaps in conflict, has on the children, and how we can then help the children as well.
There are thousands of children in this country, of course, children of our fallen heroes. And then there are children who are living with a catastrophically wounded parent. And in both cases, all of these children, they're living with the aftermath of a conflict and a war that they didn't sign up for. And so how can we show up in the communities? I know in my case, and I'm, of course, Michael is alive, and thank God he's not able to be involved with our children at this point in his recovery the way we had hoped. But there are so many people that show up, and it's the dads in the community who grab my girls and bring them out on the soccer field, or help tie up cleats before we go on for a game, or make sure they're standing there for that high five. And I watched the same for my girlfriends, my friends who their husbands were killed or died from suicide post-service, and the people in the communities who show up and just remind them how valuable their family remains to this society. I think that's just a great way to honor them.
Personal question, I suppose, but how does a relationship change after sort of Michael had injuries and you have to accept that and move forward? And then how does your relationship together change?
Well, I've known Michael since we were 14, 15 years old. So I've known Michael, pretty much my whole life. I don't remember much time before him, but what that looks like is the relationship. I think it certainly changes over time. We had a very normal marriage post-injury, and we were able to have our children, and we went on date nights, and we had the typical squabbles and challenges that people have in the day-to-day with having a young family. And we had so much good. We're in a position now where the memories of that time are certainly more secure than the future is. And so we take them day at a time. Michael knows I'm his person, and I do not take for granted or take it lightly that I'm the person that he really trusts to make the decisions that are best for him and in turn for our girls and for our whole family. And so that relationship, I'm Michael's caregiver. I navigate and decide his medical decisions and treatments and what we're doing. And he has a faith in me that I will work every single day to always fully deserve.
So Sarah, as you heard there, she embodies the sense of teamwork, and she's a military spouse, and she knows clearly that if you work together, you stay together, that you can get through almost anything. And she talks about community as well. And it's always fascinating. In all of the military interviews we've done, we've learned about how that community is so important. And now, no matter how bad it is, what you've gone through, if you are together with other people, you can find a way forward. And that's what she spends her time doing. She spends her time trying to build those communities for people. And so that should go out as a message to every single one of you, everyone who's listening to this. Go and be part of that community. Go and help others. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Go and do little things. And so Sarah has a number of charities and organizations, the Independence Fund, Save Our Allies, and they do absolutely amazing work. But you can too, and all of us can too. And of course, one of the things that we just heard from Sarah there is the importance of family. And I share that. I've had the most amazing wife, Alicia, who was by my side during my injuries, during my recovery. And as Sarah just said there, she was that somebody for Michael, her husband, Sergeant Michael Verrado. And that's when she was going to do whatever she had to be alongside him. And what a great gift that is. Let's all be like that. Go and be someone for someone else. Go help them when they can. So really, Sarah is the most remarkable woman. And I'm just so pleased that I know her. I'm so pleased that she was on the podcast, and very pleased that she saved my life as well.
We'll be back in a moment with Searching for Heroes.
And the last guest that I'd like to go back to today is Nick Lavery. Nick is another incredible person. He was a Green Beret, and he was attacked in Afghanistan in 2013, and he lost his leg. But miraculously, he went on, he did the unthinkable. He became the first special forces operator to return to combat as an amputee, an above the knee amputee. And since then, he's gone on to talk about, helping others recognize their purpose, how they got through different things. So have a listen to Nick. And certainly this is, if you want strength, well, you'll find it. You'll hear it in Nick.
Do you think that, because some people would say something terrible has happened to me, and look, you and I have both lost legs and something bad happened, but do you think that it is inside everybody to find that resilience, or do only some people have that resilience to say, you know what, I can get through this? Or do you think inside everyone has that?
I would take a bold stance, but I would say everybody has the capability. I would argue that talent exists, inherent skill is a thing. A lot of our resilience is created as young people, which is a product of both nature and nurture combined, and the circumstances in which we were raised and brought up and things we were exposed to. But I fundamentally, wholeheartedly believe resilience is a skill. It is learned behavior, and it exists within everybody. Now, for me, and I'd be interested if this is the case for you, Ben, I would say for most, they recognize the pre-existing capability on the back end of a traumatic event, or kind of hitting that rock bottom, or something really, really challenging or traumatic happens. And in order to get past that and continue to live your life and move forward, you have to tap into that existing potential. That was the case for me. And, I was a hard worker, and I've got plenty of accomplishments and accolades that I'm proud of as a two-legged guy, but I had no idea what my true capability was until I was met with that particular circumstance, set my sight on a mission, and then began moving towards that I knew I had to find a whole nother gear. I had to find another level. And it was within me the entire time. It's not like when I was in the hospital bed, some mad scientist snuck into my room and shoved the metal spike into my brain and uploaded resilience or work ethic. Those character traits and capabilities were within me. It just took me going through a really bad day at the office for those to begin to come to the surface.
Were there ever times when you thought you didn't have it? Were there really tough times at the beginning, soon after the attack? And I'll talk to you a bit about the attack in a minute, but where you thought, I don't know if I can get through this. This is really tough how I do it. Or did that never cross your mind?
Oh, no. I was met with that countless times, oftentimes countless times daily. It's a great question, man. And it's one I really do enjoy talking about, because people see the photo or the image at the end of the journey and maybe assume, man, how did you stay so positive the whole time? And how did you avoid doubting yourself and going through, the struggle and, the challenges? It's no. I was questioning whether or not this was possible sometimes every single day. And those are those little moments that you have. And that's when the game's being played. And, you got maybe, I don't know, science will say somewhere between 5, 7, 8 seconds to decide how you want to play that game. But right there and then, that is when the game's being played, when you are literally or figuratively, in my case, both, on your face, on the ground, and all the doubt is pouring in. Hey, man, maybe it's time to be a little more realistic. Is this even really practical? What are you thinking? There's a reason why no one's ever done this before. All those thoughts start to pour in, and they all start to sound incredibly convincing in that moment of weakness and defeat. That's the game right there, brother. You got a couple seconds to choose. Yep, this sucks. I don't like the way I feel right now, but you know what? I'm going to learn from what just happened, and I'm going to get back. I'm going to apply that knowledge, and I'm going to keep moving forward.
Yeah. I found when I was being evacuated, I had 10 hours, no pain meds. And there were moments I reached where I just said, I'm not sure I can do this anymore, and would stop and say to myself, you got another level. You can put that away. You can find more. And I was absolutely amazed when you found that and you put some pain to the side and you managed to keep going. And I learned on those days that we had that extra level. But before that, I didn't know. And I think one of the points of the podcast is to tell everyone, you might not have had to search for it. You might not have had to dig for it inside you, but it is there if you really try and find it. And I don't know. Are you worried that many people don't have the confidence to tell themselves that they have that? And does that hold people back?
I wouldn't say it's something I'm worried about, but I have made it kind of my next purpose in life, kind of my next mission beyond military service, to enable people to recognize that the potential that they have. And, as you know, man, when you are at the brink of death, and in my case, through all intents and purposes, I absolutely should have died. You and I should not be having this conversation today, according to the laws of biology and physiology. A lot of those rules that we know, according to science, were broken that day on March 11, 2013. And coming that close to the end, and in fact, based on your philosophy on this, your position on this, I completely crossed over and then kind of came back. This is such a gift that we get to live every single day. And I think it's a true tragedy for people to go through the bulk or perhaps their entire lives not seeing their true potential, because this isn't a dress rehearsal, Ben. Like this ride that we're on here is going to end. So as soon as we can accept that, like the Greek phrase, Latin phrase, memento mori, like life will end, right? And if you can take that in and then weaponize it, it's like, why not leave it all out on the field? Why not take the risk, tap in deep into your soul and into your mind and find that next gear and leverage it towards becoming the person that you truly want to be?
So I think what a great person Nick is to finish on right there. As he said, strength. That strength you need to get through difficult things, it is inside everyone. But can you find it? My own experience was that, and I've talked about a few guests of this, is when you are up against a wall, when you are in the worst situation possible, that other level of strength comes out. And I don't think people understand that it's in them until they have to find it. And I think that's Nick's message. That's Nick's message to every one of you, that it is in you. And that there are times in life, hopefully you don't have to go through anything as awful as Nick went through or the injuries I had, but there are moments when it is live or die. You've got to take that moment. And he said it's a moment, seconds, not to let it get the better of you, but to realize that's the moment you embrace what's happened, you realize it, or you fall. And that perhaps is what this podcast is about. How do we find that? How do we spread that? How do we keep telling everyone that it's okay? It's okay to go through difficult scenarios and different situations because you can get through it. And also there, one of the strongest people who has been on the podcast, one of the most amazing people and messages of resilience is Nick saying that it's okay to have bad moments. It's okay to worry. Everyone has bad moments, but that's when the game is really fought. Those are the moments you've got to fight through. And so to bring up today's episode, just want to say you all have that inside you. And when those moments are difficult, and we all know them, I know them, that's the moment that you lift your head up, you look for the goal at the other end, and you say, I can do it, and nothing is going to stop me. And it won't be easy. The biggest mistake is saying that things will be easy, expect them to be easy. Just understand they won't be easy, but the harder they are, the more rewarding they are. So thank you, everyone, for listening today. Thank you for listening to the whole podcast. And if you want to hear more of those interviews, go back in the podcast. You can find all of them. And I know that you will really enjoy listening to the whole episode of each one. So thank you very much. Go out and have a wonderful day and know that you can beat anything. You really can. We all can. Thank you. Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcasts Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts. And Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.